and welcome back into the Yolo podcast series today with Alex Sumsky, the co-founder and CEO of one of the most exciting sports media companies out there today, Forever Network. How are you doing, Alex, today?
I'm really good. Thank you so much for having me on. I've obviously tuned in for the past episodes since joining the YOLO family. So I was excited to have the opportunity to come on.
Yeah, really excited news here, of course, a couple of days ago that you managed to close the CRSA funding round here, where you raised about $4 million total, led by YOLO investments, of course, that are now coming on to your cap table. Just as a starting point here, Alex, could you talk a little bit more about the CRSA that you just raised, and how was it to go out to the market at this point to raise that amount of capital?
Yeah, sure. For us to give you a little bit of a background, our company was Australian based. We had been, we were founded there. I'm obviously an Australian founder, and that the business had been sort of, operating in that market for quite some time. Both from a content and manpower perspective, but then also commercially too. So for us, it was very much, new waters. We went across to abroad to the US and beyond. And this became, as you know, very much an international round. We were looking for, quite a bit of money. That's, over $6 million Australian. And, up until that point, we had raised sort of, $1.5 million in total. So it was
Significant jump.
Quite a very, very big jump, and probably a incredibly steep learning curve too. You can probably appreciate that we didn't make things easy on ourselves by picking one of the hardest climates to be raising in.
Right.
Q4 last year, when we sort of started to kick off that process, and that was difficult. And in hindsight, I probably should have done it a little bit earlier and give myself a little bit more lead time on that. But yeah, we went out into the marketplace. We were very, very blessed to have sort of a great support, great support from the shareholders that we already had on our cap table, who helped facilitate some strong introductions. And you know what that's like. You get one healthy introduction, and then that is another introduction, and it's this. If you have got something of substance and you're a good founder who's trying to do something really, really good, and the company's got a great foundation, and what you're working on is worth investing, that snowball effect tends to work. You tend to get in front of the type of investors who are looking to fund opportunities like that, and you should be able to put a decent sized round together, which is we were really, really lucky that sort of came to fruition for us.
Amazing, Alex. And I want to talk a little bit more about the company itself. You founded Forever Network almost 10 years ago. It's
Yes.
grown to become one of the major sports media brands globally at this point, with engaging fans in the hundreds of millions. It's a incredible growth and incredible brand that you have built, Alex. But can you take us back to the beginning and talk about the inception story of the company, and just a little bit more about Forever Network as a company? What is it exactly that you do?
Yeah, I think the easiest way to answer that is to probably give you a little bit of the origin story, and I'll try and keep it as succinct as I can. But for me, I'm 29 right now. It started when I was sort of 15, 16 years old, when I had sort of the very, very first thought bubble, and it came from a place of being not a little bit probably left wanting on the sports media offering at the time, particularly for my favorite sport, which was basketball and NBA. It's an incredibly popular sport. It's the number one participation sport in Australia, and NBA as a league has more like league pass uptake than any other region outside of the US globally. So very, very popular, but yet the sports media offering was so bland at the time. There was sort of ESPN, and everything was web property focused, and it was heavy focus on editorial, and that was it. And I sort of thought, oh man, I would really, really prefer to have something that sort of more resonated with my generation. We wanted things, quickly. We wanted sort of snackable content. We wanted it to be narrative based and engaging and visual. Vertical video. We wanted high end graphic design. This was the type of offering that we thought that the marketplace was missing. So I sort of ran it as a bit of a passion project. It was very much just a hobby of mine when I was in high school. Had a small little blog, had a small little page, distributed it to my friends, had about 1,000 people, and I was over the moon with that. And then the broader community started to sort of react to that. It picked up a lot of traction and started to grow organically. But of course, it was still just a small thing. And it wasn't, I wasn't really pulling any sort of major income from it. It was really just sort of like something to do on the side. It was not until about 2015 when we had started to hit like a critical mass. Like I was, we'd reached 100,000 fans at this point. And that's when I twigged that, this is sort of starting to snowball and get to that scale that I could see it was going to grow exponentially. And I wanted to, I guess leverage that into, something greater. I had a vision for, we could really disrupt the market here. We could take over the social first landscape, and we didn't necessarily need an app at this time or a web property to do that, or a massive website. It was about dominating the channels and the real estate of the channels that, millennials were spending the majority of their time, which was, places like Instagram and Facebook and all of these, 78% of millennials were using these channels as their primary source for news at the time. And then on top of that, they were opening these apps on average 126 times per day. So it was a no-brainer for me. I was like, this distributed media model is really how we could dominate the marketplace. If we are front of mind and taking up all of the space on people's devices on the apps that they're spending the most times, that you'll never be able to compete with. You're not going to be able to necessarily build the next Facebook, but you can always win on these channels. And then that was really the kernel that kickstarted everything. And then from there, it really just took off. We saw 25%, year-on-year growth. We became the number one brand on social based on the ComScore leaderboards for several years running. At this point, it's now been 6 years in a row that we've taken that number one spot in Australia. We account for 11% of all social actions taken in Australia. So it was
incredible.
It was very significant what we had built, and it was a testament to the fact that we were able to find product market fit from a media perspective. This was very much parallel the cultural tone of the target audience and deliver them exactly what they're asking for, and do it in a way that other people weren't. And that was sort of enough to scratch, the itch that people like myself had. I was really only solving the problem for me, and it just so happened to sort of, address a need in the market.
Doesn't it feel like it's a bit of a generational shift taking place in the sports media world, or in media in general at the moment, Alex? I mean, you have this kind of old school media offering like ESPN, as you mentioned, where you kind of like sit on the sofa and watch the TV, and that is the experience as a fan. Whereas you and others perhaps in the kind of new generation sports media world are not used to asking people to silently sit and watch a TV, but actually engaging the audience at the same time. Is that kind of where you're going as well? Like, do you believe the future of media is more engaging for the viewer?
It's all about having a second screen experience. The thing about enjoying sports is that you can take it on face value, but really it is the conversation around the game that's almost better than the game itself. it's the narratives, it's the narrative arc that you're taken on throughout any sort of season of a league. In this instance, talking about the NBA, which is very narrative based. People want to be able to participate in those discussions. They want people to be distributing and creating content that, again, touch on those things that they might think in the moment or think in the back of their mind, but there's no mouthpiece that's really addressing those or bringing those to the surface. And we really wanted to be that. And I guess the way that I think about it is very much it's sports media by the fans for the fans approach. And I know that's probably a little bit of a cliche, but that is honestly the mentality that we adopted, and it is what fans respond to the most. It is actually we cared, and it was such a important mission for us that it is what ultimately led us down the product route. It's why we started bringing these products to the marketplace as well, because the thinking was this can go deeper than content. This can be a product experience. This can be something for someone to engage in beyond media consumption as well, because these are the sorts of things that people we know already love to do while they watch sport.
Right. And Alex, so you built this incredible engaged user fan base that keeps coming back to your product over and over. You have an engaged audience there that is amazing. And how do you now take that audience and monetize it? How do you create a business around this audience?
So for us, we built, we were able to have quite a bit of, in my opinion, quite a bit of success in the Australian marketplace from a brand perspective. Obviously, when you have that many eyeballs, you do attract the interest of brand partners, everywhere, and anyone from sort of the Nikes, the Adidas's, the Converse, the Under Armours of the world, but then also sort of like more consumer brands too, and then eBay and companies like these that are trying to reach a young millennial male audience, which are some of the hardest consumers to actually reach and authentically speak to. Utilizing properties like ours are a great way to do it. We had a lot of success there, and then we had even more success with wagering businesses. Obviously, sports betting in Australia is huge. We had several major sports betting partners out of Australia who came on to do multi-year brand partnership deals with us. And we were sort of driving significant revenue with those deals. And we realized it was one of those moments where you look at our market size, which for the brand content space, about $3 billion in Australia. And then you look at the US where it's $80 billion. It's like, well, this is where we need to be playing. Our audience is 70% US. We don't want to be restricted by just the fact that we were born here and we incorporated the company here. And so that was what really prompted us to go global. And then from a monetization perspective, it was like, well, now we've just increased our funnel size from this to this when we start talking to global partners. But that's really just on the advertising side. We're really lucky in that we were able to find green shoots on revenue really early in a variety of different capacities, including transaction based revenue, affiliate revenue. There was a bunch of different models that we found successful and that we were able to test, and that is really what informed our entire sort of monetization strategy now that we're married to since closing this round, and everything on the product side and everything else that we're doing.
Brilliant, Alex. And I want to kind of take a step back and just kind of check in with you as a founder as well. You built this company for a long time. You mentioned, kind of the true Inception stories from even when you were in your teenage years here. What have you learned building this company as a founder? Have you faced any major challenges along the way? What were the big learnings, and what does it take to keep going?
Oh man, that is a tough question to answer. There is no end to the things that I've learned and continue to learn. I'm really lucky that I was surrounded by some incredibly talented people that have gone through the process, built businesses, exited, and I can sort of sponge off them and learn so much about sort of their journey and take a lot of learnings from that. I learn a lot about people. I learn a lot how to sort of work within a team environment, how to lead others, how to get the best out of people, and then some of the more cliche ones like perseverance. Obviously we're talking about every startup founder knows some of the obstacles you can face on your journey are ones that can have you head in your hands, questioning whether you even want to do this anymore. Whether is this even for me? It can get so difficult at times. And so it really does take that dedication, perseverance, and you have to truly be passionate and believe about like either the need you're fulfilling or the experience you're bringing to the marketplace or what you're providing to your customers or whatever it is. You have to really have strong conviction, because that's what's going to carry you through the tough times. I think the biggest challenge that we faced was when COVID hit, and I think a lot of businesses could relate to this. We had just like the worst time because at this point we had closed a little bit of capital. I had made some significant hires where we, some that were the highest paid people in the company, essentially. And we, suddenly we were dealing with a situation where the league was shutting down on a whim. There was no sport. There was no live sport. Advertising dollars had dried up. And there was this sort of question around, are we even going to be able to come out the other end of this? Like I had to almost pivot the business model 4 or 5 times throughout COVID to, find revenue opportunities to remain sustainable and sort of weather the storm. And that I built a lot of resilience through that process personally. And then I had a lot of growth there, but that was a difficult challenge. And it's honestly the challenge. It was so big that it is what prompted us to make that switch from, we're a social first business to we're actually a product focused business. That's what pushed us into product, because we were like, hey, we need to be able to create something of our own so that, in the instance that, things that are happening that are outside of our control, we have a sandbox that we can play in and we can bring everyone in and, we dictate the terms, we create whatever it is that we choose to create for people to do that's independent to anything that's happening outside of, the world, whether that's, the sport itself, the news around it, or the advertisers that help fund it. That's what pushed us, the need to sort of diversify the offering and probably, de-risk the entire company just a little bit.
Mark Cuban was definitely correct in April of 2020 when he said that how companies act during COVID will define them for the next 10 years, good or bad. And I think a lot of resilient companies came out of that period for sure. And it's good to hear that you managed that as well, Alex. I want to take also a step back and talk a little bit more about the involvement of Yolo here. So you just closed the investment round here. You got Yolo as the lead investor in the $4 million round. And obviously you share the nationality with the great Tim Heats, the general partner and the founder of Yolo Group, who is who in the conversations that I've had with Tim, he's always been kind of pushing back on SEO affiliation, and he's been very eager to find new ways of attracting players into the online gambling sphere. And you definitely represent that kind of new generation of sports media companies. And I'm really curious to hear, how were the conversations with Yolo? How was the experience so far working with them? And what made you accept them to be part of the cap table?
Well, I mean, it's so funny because it's one of those things where it was, obviously Tim, a fellow Australian. I mean, you already know his love for cricket. which runs incredibly deep, and one of someone that we have in the business, Nick, is our chief strategy officer, he was my running mate on the Rays. He's a massive cricket fan who's been playing his whole life, and they immediately were riffing on that, and I was like, oh my gosh, if this doesn't lead to an investment, nothing will. But in all seriousness, though, Tim had such an incredible view, and it sort of like, I think it was a bit of a breath of fresh air, because we got to YOLO quite late in the piece. We'd already sort of connected with a bunch of funds, and one of the things that we noticed about him is very much in line with what you were touching on. He had a strong view about organically bringing new players to games, and doing it in a way that was non-intrusive, and that also wasn't going to alienate them or make them feel like they were being sold to, and all the problems that people run into with being able to migrate users across from distributed platforms to something that's owned and operated, and then you have to get them to jump through more hoops, like depositing money and actually engaging with your games. This was something that he understood was a marathon and not a sprint. He loves to move fast, by the way. Don't get me wrong. He wants to grow and try and fail and learn quickly and adapt and move forward. That's I picked that up straight away. But with that said, he also has this like very measured patience with the process that I found incredibly refreshing from a VC. He understood that we're going to have to do certain things to build up a little bit of brand equity first in this space and get them comfortable before you can pull the trigger and just you can't just flood everyone across. It's a gradual process that and then it sort of ramps up and inclines quite fast once you nail the strategy. But you have to be careful with that. It's very delicate, and that relationship that you have with an audience is fickle. It takes a lifetime to build that trust and authenticity, and you can lose it very, very quickly. And so we were just talking about that, and I realized quite early on in the piece that he understood the user journey, and that for me was a big green flag, and someone I knew that, well, if we have YOLO on board, they're going to be really, really supportive of the process. So that was a big one for me. But then also, I found YOLO to be a little bit more, maybe perhaps you could call it experimental. They're willing to try things that are a little bit different. I felt like they were willing to sort of take a few more risks in a market that had become very, very conservative, particularly in this space. I just felt very early on that this was going to be quite a good fit. We had tons of discussions where we had sincerely hoped that they would want to be the lead for this round. When we first started talking, they were like, oh, maybe we would participate. Maybe we would just be, we will follow in with others, or maybe we just do it, write $1 million check or something like that. But we kind of thought, oh no, like these guys get it, and they get it deeply. We need them to be sort of a much more serious part of our cap table. And thankfully they saw it the same way.
Absolutely. It's the passion that Tim and the Yolo Group brings to the table that really sets them apart from other VCs, in my opinion. And they've obviously done really well because of that. So great to hear that. And so last question for you here today, Alex. You raised the capital, you built a great brand, you have a good plan ahead. What's in the cards now for the business? What's Forever Network going to look like in 3 years' time?
Oh, 3 years' time. That's such a risky thing to say these days, because I feel like 3 years ago I would have predicted something completely different. But for us, I'm super, super committed to our mission and our goal, and that is to bring these exciting sort of second screen experiences to sports fans globally. Our major goal is, there's a couple of things that we care deeply about from a vision perspective and a product perspective. And then there's a couple more things that are probably a little bit more businessy. But first and foremost, it's we want to expand sports. We're already scoping out a couple of new verticals. We're not just basketball. We're looking at baseball. We're looking at football. We're looking at soccer. We want by the end of this year to be in several different sort of sports markets and growing those audiences quickly. We want to sort of diversify the sports, diversify the content offering there, and grow really quickly. Secondly, we want to be able to bring Vote to the marketplace in the form that we know our users and our fans are waiting for it and what we've promised them. We've obviously had some successful beta tests, some open betas, some closed betas, lots and lots and lots of active players that we've had on that journey with us, and we've got 6 figures now on the wait list for the next version. So we want to be able to get that right. We want to be able to have both, monetization opportunities for us on the microtransaction and freemium model for users and players that doesn't require the traditional depositing method. And then in addition to that, we want to be able to have sort of like a real money component down the track. Eventually, we do want players to be able to participate as deeply as they would like in our product experiences. Everything from Vote, Hot Hands, which we had some incredible tests with, and have done that alongside Dabble, which is another sort of YOLO portfolio company we've really, really enjoyed having the opportunity to work with. I think, being able to have these product experiences fully built out, available across the board, and to all sports, and have all of our properties funneling into these products and having one, exciting ecosystem that, all of our fans and players are sort of participating in. That's a really exciting, vision for me. It's uniting all of our sports fans, across the globe, and having them a part of this sort of gamification of that. That's not like anything that's in the market today, and certainly not with the media component. And then of course, setting all of that aside, when we talk about 3 years time, we'd love to be a super profitable business. We'd like to have 100 plus staff, and cash flowing nicely. Being sort of, we've always been revenue focused, but now one of the downfalls of businesses as they get sort of several years on in this space is I find that they don't really have like a true pathway to profitability. And that's something that we're trying to differentiate ourselves, now by getting sort of, profit focused as early as we can, so that we have as many sort of free kicks on the product side as we can.
Brilliant, Alex. Well, it's clear that you represent a new generation of really exciting ventures in the space, and just having the multiple conversation during Next New York last week, or the other week, made it clear that there's a lot of excitement around the business. Thank you so much, Alex, for giving more context to what you do in the future, and congratulations again for closing the round, and all the best of luck in the future.
Thanks so much. I appreciate the time. Thank you.